The ice storm was rising like a monster. The sky was dark, filled with white snow that never stopped. The cold wind cut through the air like sharp knives. Everything on the alien world was frozen, silent, and deadly. In the middle of that storm, a small figure struggled to walk. It was a child, not a human child, but an alien child. Its skin was pale blue, shining weakly under the storm light. Its big eyes were full of tears, and each tear began to freeze before falling. The child's small body was shaking, weak, and close to collapsing. No one was near, no family, no friends, only snow, ice, and endless white emptiness. The child cried out, but the storm swallowed the sound. Its voice was thin, almost broken. The storm was cruel. It did not care for the little one's pain. The child hugged itself, trying to stay warm. Its thin clothes were not made for this storm. Every step felt heavier. The ground under its feet cracked with ice. The child looked up to the sky, but the sky gave no answer. Only snow, wind, and darkness. Fear grew inside the child. It remembered its home, its parents, the warmth of fire. But that was gone, lost somewhere far away. Now there was only cold, silence, and death waiting in the storm. The child's small hands reached forward, hoping for help, but nothing was there. Only emptiness. The storm grew louder. The snow hit harder. The child's tears froze faster. Each drop of sadness turned to ice before touching the ground. The alien child cried, but even the storm seemed to laugh. The world around was becoming a prison of ice. Still, the child tried to walk, one step, then another. Its legs were weak, its body ready to fall, but something inside it refused to give up. A tiny hope lived in its heart. Maybe, just maybe, someone would come. The storm roared like a beast. Shadows danced in the white fog. The child thought it saw shapes moving. Were they creatures, or only tricks of the storm? Its heart beat faster. Fear told it to run, but where could it run? There was no safe place. No warm shelter, only endless snow. The child fell to its knees. Its small hands touched the frozen ground. The ice burned like fire against its skin. Its eyes closed for a moment, heavy with pain and weakness. Maybe this was the end. Maybe no one would come. Then through the blinding snow, a strange glow appeared. Far away, a soft light broke the darkness. The child opened its eyes, struggling to focus. It was not the light of its people. It was something different, something unknown. The storm pushed against it. But the light grew stronger. The child's heart whispered hope, but hope was dangerous. What if the light was not safety, but danger? What if the storm was hiding monsters? The child wanted to believe, but fear was strong. Still, something inside told it not to give up. Something told it to keep looking. Because maybe, just maybe, that light meant life. The child wiped its frozen tears. It stood up again, even as its legs shook. It took one step forward, then another. The storm screamed louder, as if angry, but the child kept moving. Its small body bent under the snow, but its eyes never left the light. The world was ice. The air was knives. The storm was endless. But the alien child's will was stronger. Its tears froze. Its voice broke. But its heart whispered again and again, "Someone will come. Someone will save me." And far away through the storm, the light kept moving closer. Slow, steady, powerful. The child did not know it yet. But the light belonged to a human, a stranger, from another world, a being who would change everything. The storm raged on. The snow fell heavier. The child's steps grew weaker. But the story was only beginning, because sometimes, in the coldest storm, hope shines the brightest. The storm was still strong. Snow fell like endless knives from the sky. The child walked slowly, each step smaller than the last. Its little legs shook. Its breath came out in clouds of frozen air. The world around it was empty. Only white, only cold, only silence mixed with the roar of the storm. The child cried again, but its voice was weak. It was a soft cry, almost like a whisper. a whisper that no one could hear. Still, the child tried, because maybe someone was listening. The tears on its cheeks froze into tiny crystals. They sparkled under the faint light of the storm. The child's small hands rubbed its arms, but nothing stopped the cold from biting deeper. It looked up at the sky and shouted again. This time the voice cracked, desperate, but the storm swallowed the sound like it was nothing. The child fell on its knees. Snow covered its small body like a blanket of death. It pressed its hands into the ice and whispered in its alien language, words of prayer, words of fear. Maybe the stars would hear, maybe the universe would listen, and then something strange happened, far away. The storm shifted. Through the thick fog of snow, a shape appeared. At first, it was only a shadow, tall and silent. The child's eyes widened. With fear, was it a beast? Was it death coming closer? The figure moved slowly, step by step. The glow from before shone again. It was brighter now, cutting through the storm like a knife. The child froze in place, unable to run. Its heart pounded inside its chest. This was not one of its kind. This was something unknown, something larger, stronger, wrapped in strange armor. The storm screamed louder, but the light kept pushing through. The child covered its face, too afraid to look. The figure drew closer, taller and taller. Finally, the shadow became clear. It was not a monster, not an animal. It was a human. The human wore a heavy suit. The helmet shone with a strong white light. On the chest, machines hummed, fighting against the cold. The human looked powerful, but in the storm, even the human struggled. Each step forward was hard. The storm wanted to push the figure back, but the human did not stop. The child gasped. It had never seen a human before. Stories spoke of strangers, from other worlds. But stories were only dreams. Now the dream was real, and the child did not know if this dream was good or bad. The human stopped a few steps away. Snow swirled around them. The human raised one hand slowly. Not a weapon, not a threat. Just a hand. Open, waiting. The child trembled. Its heart told it to run, but its body was too weak, too frozen. All it could do was stare. The human's voice came through the helmet. It was deep, muffled by the storm, but it was calm, gentle, words the child did not understand, yet the tone carried warmth. It sounded like safety. It sounded like hope. The child shook its head. It stepped back, afraid. The human lowered the hand. Kneeling down, the figure became smaller. The light from the helmet softened. The human was trying to show peace, trying to show they meant no harm. The child blinked. Its tears froze again on its cheeks. But inside something stirred, a small piece of trust, a small feeling that maybe, just maybe, this stranger was here to help. The human reached into a pocket on the suit. They pulled out a small device. It glowed with a soft heat. Steam rose from it, fighting against the frozen air. The human placed it on the ground, sliding it slowly forward. The child looked at it with wide eyes. The warmth touched its skin even from a distance. For the first time since the storm began, the child felt something other than pain. It reached out a shaking hand, hesitant, slow. Finally, its fingers brushed the warmth. The child gasped, pulling back. But then it reached again, this time holding the device tightly. Tears filled its eyes again. But these tears did not freeze so quickly. The heat melted them as they fell. The human stayed still, not moving, not rushing, just waiting. The child's eyes met the human's visor. It could not see the face inside, but it could feel the kindness. The storm still raged. The wind still screamed. But for the child, everything became quiet. In that moment, it was no longer alone. The cry for help had been answered. The alien child and the human looked at each other, two beings from different worlds, brought together by the storm, by pain, by hope. The bond was not yet strong, but something had begun, something that would change both their lives, and somewhere in the distance, the storm whispered again, as if warning them that this was only the beginning, that the real danger was yet to come. The human stood still in the storm. Snow swirled around the tall figure like ghosts in the air. The helmet light shone softly now, no longer sharp. It was as if the human knew the child was afraid. And so, the light became warm instead of harsh. The alien child clutched the heating device, its small fingers pressed tight around it. The warmth gave strength, but its eyes never left the strange figure. This was no one from its world. This was a stranger wrapped in metal and glass, a giant. Compared to its small body, the human slowly placed one knee into the snow, lowering themselves until their height was closer to the child. It was not an order, not a threat. It was a quiet message. I am not here to harm you. The child tilted its head, unsure. Its big eyes were still wet, but there was less fear now, more curiosity, more wonder. The storm roared above them. Wind beat. Against the human suit, snow piled on the child's shoulders, but the two figures stayed locked in silence. One too weak to move, the other too careful to rush. Then the human raised a gloved hand again, slow, steady, like moving through water. The child tensed, ready to run, but the hand stopped halfway. The palm opened wide, facing upward. No weapon, no danger, only an invitation. The child blinked, confused. It had never seen such a gesture, but something deep inside whispered that it was safe. Through the storm, the human spoke again. The words were strange, a language the child could not understand. But the voice carried meaning. It was calm, almost soft, like the sound of waves on a quiet shore. The child's breathing slowed, not because it understood the words, but because it felt the kindness. It felt the care hidden in the tone. The child took a shaky step forward. Snow crunched under its feet. It stopped halfway, eyes locked on the human. The human did not move. They waited with the patience of someone who understood fear. Minutes passed, though in the storm it felt like hours. Finally, the child stretched out one small hand. The movement was weak, almost like falling, but the meaning was strong. It was the first sign of trust. The human leaned forward just enough. Their gloved hand touched the child's frozen fingers. For a moment, the storm felt silent. The connection was fragile but real. Warmth passed from glove to skin. The child gasped softly. It was not the cold touch of death, it was life. The human's suit released more heat, protecting the small hand from the icy air. The child held on tighter. And in that moment, fear turned into something else. Not yet safety, not yet love, but hope. The human slowly pulled something from their belt, a small shield made of glowing metal. They opened it like a dome and placed it into the snow. A barrier rose, thin but strong. The wind bent around it. The storm became less fierce inside its circle. The child's eyes widened again. This was magic to them, but to the human, it was only technology. The child stepped inside the small shield. The air was warmer, the snow gentler. The human followed. Carefully now, for the first time, they stood close without the storm between them. The child studied the tall stranger. The strange helmet, the glowing suit, the heavy boots that sank deep into the ice. And yet, behind all of it, the child felt something human, something alive, something kind. The human bent low, bringing the helmet closer. The light reflected in the child's wide eyes. The human touched their chest, pointing to themselves, then spoke one word slowly. A name, a sound. The child tilted its head, repeating the motion, pointing to its own chest. A different sound, a different name. And so in the storm, names were shared, even if they were not yet understood. The bond grew stronger with every small gesture, but the storm outside did not rest. It pressed harder, louder, as if angry that hope was alive in its cold prison. And in the distance, something else stirred. Shadows moved through the snow. Shapes that were not human, shapes that were not child. The human's visor caught the motion. A warning flashed inside their helmet. Danger was near. The child did not see it. Its eyes were still on the human. The warmth, the kindness, the miracle of not being alone, but the human saw, and deep inside they knew. This meeting was not the end of danger, it was only the beginning. Still they did not pull away. The human let the child's hand stay in theirs, because in the middle of a storm, sometimes trust is the strongest weapon. Sometimes a single connection can keep the dark away. The storm howled, the shadows crept closer, but the human and the child stood together now, side by side, 2 lives joined by fate, 2 hearts beating against the cold. The human had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same again. The storm still roared outside the shield. Winds screamed, snow slammed against the barrier, but inside, there was a small circle of quiet. 2 figures sat close, 1 human, 1 alien child. For the first time since the storm began, there was a pause. Not safety, not peace, but a fragile breath of calm. The child held tightly to the small heat device, its pale blue fingers curled. Around it, warmth spread into its skin, melting the frozen tears. It looked at the human with wide eyes. Fear had not left, but curiosity grew stronger now. Who was this strange giant, wrapped in metal and light? Why did they kneel? Why did they help instead of walking past like the storm itself? The human sat in silence inside the helmet. Their breath fogged the glass. They studied the little one, the child's body weak, its small shoulders shaking. The human's heart tightened. This was not just a lost creature. This was a child. In pain, slowly, the human raised a gloved hand again. No sudden movements, only care, only patience. They touched their chest and spoke softly, repeating the name they had given before, a sound carried by the storm's edge. The child blinked, listening, then touched its own chest, repeating its own name again. 2 names in 2 tongues. Neither understood, but both respected. The child tilted its head. Its eyes shone like glass, reflecting the human's light. It whispered something in its own language. The words were soft, broken. The human did not understand, but the tone told enough. It was a plea, a question, maybe even hope. The human reached to their side and pulled out another device. It glowed, gently pulsing with warmth. The child flinched at first, but when the human placed it closer, the warmth surrounded the air. The child stretched out its hands, fingers trembling, the heat wrapped around them like invisible fire. The child gasped softly, and for the first time, a tiny smile flickered across its face. The smile was small, weak, but real. It was the first crack in the wall of fear. The humans saw it, and even though the storm still howled, inside the helmet, their heart felt lighter, because a bond had been born, fragile as glass, but stronger than the storm. The child moved closer. Its steps were hesitant, but not forced. It stopped just near the human, eyes wide, studying every detail of the suit, the glowing lines, the heavy boots, the strange helmet. With one small hand it reached out and touched the human's arm. The glove was hard, cold on the outside, but beneath the heat of life pulsed. The child could feel it, and it did not pull away. The human lowered their other hand slowly, opening the palm. Again this time, the child placed its tiny fingers inside. The touch was light as snow, but it carried a weight the storm could not break. 2 different worlds, 1 fragile connection. But it was enough. The storm outside seemed angrier now, as if nature itself did not want this bond to exist. The wind screamed louder, the snow crashed harder, but inside the shield the child leaned against the human's arm, trusting, hoping. The human stayed still, strong as a wall, protecting without words. Minutes passed like hours. The human studied the child's weak body, its breathing shallow, its skin too cold. It would not survive long without shelter. The human knew this. They looked at the map inside the helmet, searching, scanning, a cave, a building, any safe place, but the map was empty. The storm had covered everything, still they could not leave the child here. The connection was fragile, but it gave both of them strength. The human placed a hand gently on the child's shoulder. The child looked up. The visor reflected its own tiny face. The human spoke again, calm, slow, words that meant, "Come with me." The child did not understand the language, but it understood the gesture, the tone, the look. It nodded slowly. Trust had taken root. It was small, but it was real. The human reached into the pack, pulled out a thin blanket, wrapped it around the child's body. The child shivered, but felt the warmth settle in. Its head leaned against the human's chest, plate, eyes heavy. The storm still raged, but the fear inside the child grew smaller, because now it was not alone. Outside the barrier, shadows moved again. The human's visor caught them, tall shapes, crawling low across the snow, not part of the storm, not wind, not tricks of the eye, something alive, something dangerous. The human's hand moved to the weapon on their belt. Slow, quiet, because the fragile connection had to be protected. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Inside the shield, the child slept for a moment. The human watched the shadows grow closer. The bond was still fragile, but already it had become the only light in this storm. The child had found hope, and the human had found purpose. And neither of them knew yet that this fragile connection would decide the fate of more than just themselves. It would decide the fate of two worlds. The storm screamed louder than ever. The shield dome shook under the force of the wind. Snow and ice slammed against it like claws trying to break through. But outside the white chaos, something else moved. Not wind, not snow, not shadows. Something alive, something watching. The human's visor flickered with warning lights. Shapes detected in the storm. The system marked them as unknown. Too many moving at once, too fast, too quiet. The human's hand pressed against the weapon on their belt. Their eyes narrowed behind the glass. The alien child slept for a moment, its small head resting on the human's chest plate. Its body, still weak but calmer now. The warmth of the blanket and the human's presence gave it peace. But peace was fragile. The storm would not allow it to last long, and neither would the creatures hiding in the snow. The human stayed low, silent, steady, every sense alert. Through the blizzard, shapes began to appear. At first, they looked like pieces of the storm itself, sharp and jagged, tall and crawling. But then they moved in ways the storm could not, bending, twisting, circling. Eyes glowed faintly inside. The shadows, cold, pale, hungry. The human tightened their grip on the weapon, not raising it yet, because sudden moves might wake the child and fear could make the child scream. That scream could draw the creatures closer. So the human waited, watching, measuring. Every heartbeat loud inside the helmet. One of the creatures came nearer, its body long, thin, made of black ice and sharp edges. It crawled low on too many legs, its head turned, sniffing the air. The storm covered its movements, but the human could hear the faint sound, a crack of frozen limbs, a hiss of frozen breath. The child stirred. Its eyes opened slowly. For a moment it smiled weakly, still holding the heat device, but then it saw the shadow behind the human. The smile vanished, replaced with wide fear. The child's lips moved, whispering in its language, a word the human did not know, but the meaning was clear. Monster. The human rose quickly, one arm pulling the child closer, the other raising the weapon. A bright light burst from the gun, cutting through the storm. The nearest creature hissed, its icy body recoiling from the heat. The storm shrieked as if in anger. But the shadows did not run. They circled tighter, hungry, patient, ready. The child clung to the human's suit, its small fingers digging into the armor. It hid its face, trembling. The human kept their stance firm, heart pounding, but movements calm. They stepped forward slowly, placing themselves between the child and the circling creatures. The fragile bond had no words, but it was strong enough to say one. Truth. I will protect you. The creatures moved closer. Their glowing eyes shone like cold stars. Their jagged bodies scraped against the ice. The sound was like glass breaking again and again. The human fired another shot. A burst of light and heat exploded in the storm. One creature screamed, its body melting into shards, but two more appeared in its place. The storm seemed to give them life. Endless, relentless, the child cried out now, its voice weak but full of fear. The human bent low and pressed a hand against the child's back. The gesture was simple, but it carried meaning even across worlds. "Stay with me. Don't be afraid." The shield dome flickered. The storm pressed harder. The human knew they could not stay here. The creatures would break through soon. They needed shelter, real shelter, somewhere solid, somewhere safe. The visor map blinked again. A faint mark appeared. An old cave nearby. If they could reach it, they might survive. The human pulled the child into their arms. The blanket wrapped tighter. The child held the heat device close. Its tears streamed again, but the human's body shielded them from the storm. With the other hand, the human aimed at the ground. Another burst of heat exploded. Snow cleared for a moment. A path opened. It would not last long, but it was enough. The creatures screamed, their icy voices high and sharp. They rushed forward, crawling, leaping. The human moved fast, boots heavy. In the snow, every step a fight against the storm. But they did not stop. They would not stop. Not with the child's life in their arms. The fragile connection had become strength. It gave the human purpose. It gave the child courage. And together, they pushed through the storm, leaving the safety of the shield dome behind, running into the heart of the storm, with shadows chasing them, with death only steps away. The storm was merciless, the creatures endless, but the human's grip was firm, and the child's eyes, though full of fear, carried a spark of trust, because even in the darkest storm, it knew one thing now. It was no longer alone, and as the cave came into sight, glowing faintly with strange light, the human's heart pounded harder. The hidden danger was real, but so was the fragile bond they had created, and sometimes hope itself is the most dangerous weapon of all. The storm chased them like a living beast. Snow ripped at their faces, wind screamed in their ears. Every step was heavy, every breath was pain. But the human did not stop. Their arms held the child close, protecting, shielding. Their boots crashed into the ice, forcing a path forward. Behind them, the creatures shrieked, their voices cut through the storm like knives. Glowing eyes darted through the white fog, crawling, leaping, circling. They were faster on the ice. They belonged to the storm, and they wanted the child, the humans. Visor flashed red. Distance to the cave. Not far, but the creatures were closer. The storm pushed harder, and the child's body grew weaker. The human adjusted their grip. The blanket around the child fluttered like broken wings. The child's small hands clung to the human's armor. Its wide eyes filled with both fear and hope. It whispered in its own tongue. The human could not understand the words, but they knew the meaning. Don't let go. The human's breath was heavy. Fog pressed against the helmet glass. They turned their head just in time to see one of the creatures leap. Its sharp limbs spread wide, its mouth a jagged crack of frozen teeth. The human twisted their body, a burst of fire shot from their weapon. The creature screamed, melted into shards, but two more took its place. The storm gave birth to more with every minute. The human ran harder. The cave's light flickered in. The distance, a soft blue glow calling through the storm. It was like a star at the end of endless night. The child lifted its head, its eyes lit with recognition. It pointed a trembling finger, whispering a word again and again, a name. The cave was not only shelter, it was a place the child knew. The human tightened their hold. With new strength, they pushed forward. Snow rose high around their legs, but they did not stop. The creatures shrieked again, closer now. One claw struck the human's shoulder. Scraping against the armor, sparks burst into the storm. The human stumbled but did not fall. They fired back. Light and heat filled the night. The creature hissed, falling to pieces. But more were coming. Always more. The cave was near now, The entrance wide and glowing. Blue crystals pulsed along its edges. The storm seemed weaker near them. The creatures hesitated. Their glowing eyes dimmed. They hissed, but did not cross closer. The human understood. The cave repelled them. It was safety. Real safety at last. The human rushed inside. Snow fell from their armor as they crossed the glowing line. The child shivered but looked back. The creatures stayed just outside, pacing, hissing, angry. But none dared step closer. The storm itself stopped at the mouth of the cave, as if an invisible wall held it back. The human set the child gently on the ground, the blanket still wrapped tight. The child collapsed weakly but smiled. For the first time, its body was not in danger. For the first time, its tears did not freeze. The crystals glowed warmly. Their light filled the cave with calm. The child touched one with shaking fingers. It hummed softly, the color reflected in its wide eyes. It whispered again in its own tongue, this time softer, gentler, a word of comfort, maybe even a word of thanks. The human sat beside the child. Their chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. The weapon rested across their knees. Their eyes stayed sharp, watching the entrance. But for a moment, they allowed themselves to breathe, to feel the warmth, to feel the bond. The cave was strange. The walls shimmered with glowing crystals. Their light pulsed like a heartbeat. The air was warmer, filled with faint hums. It felt alive. The child pressed its forehead against the crystal. Its lips moved again, whispering. The human tilted their head, listening, though they could not understand. The tone carried memory. This was not just a cave. This was once a home. The child turned back. Its eyes met the human's visor. It touched its chest, then pointed at the human, then pressed its small hand against the human's armor. The message was clear even without words. You saved me. The human's heart tightened inside the suit. They placed their gloved hand gently on the child's back. No words were needed. The gesture carried all meaning. I will keep saving you. Outside, the storm screamed louder. The creatures clawed at the snow, but none dared enter the glowing cave. Inside, there was fragile safety, a fragile peace. The child leaned against the human's side, its body finally relaxing, its eyes closing slowly, exhaustion pulling it into sleep. The human stayed awake, their visor lights scanning the shadows, their weapon ready, because fragile safety could break at any moment. But as they looked at the child sleeping peacefully, they knew the danger was worth it, because in saving the child they had found something greater than survival. They had found meaning in the storm, and though the night was not over, though the danger was not gone, the cave had given them something new, a moment of warmth, a moment of trust, a fragile shelter in a world of ice. And sometimes, a fragile shelter is enough to keep hope alive. The storm still roared outside the cave. Winds screamed, snow hammered against the rocks. The creatures circled, their glowing eyes burning in the dark. But they did not step inside. The crystals kept them away. The child and the human were safe, for now inside the glowing cave silence grew. The crystals pulsed with soft blue light. They hummed gently, like a lullaby sung by the earth. The warmth inside melted the ice from the child's skin. Its pale blue cheeks glistened. No more frozen tears, only calm breath. The human sat with their back against the wall, the weapon across their lap, always ready. But their shoulders loosened, for the first time since entering this frozen world. They allowed themselves to rest. Their eyes softened as they looked down. At the small figure leaning against them, the child was wrapped in the blanket, its body small, fragile, but its face was peaceful now. The storm no longer reached its heart. It slept soundly, its tiny hand still resting on the human's glove. As if afraid to let go, even in sleep it clung to safety. The human tilted their helmet slightly. A quiet sigh filled the glass. They thought of their own world far away, a world filled with people, cities, voices. Yet in this cold silence, with only one child beside them, they felt something stronger than any crowd. They felt purpose. They felt needed. The crystals around them glowed brighter. The child stirred, waking slowly. Its big eyes blinked open, reflecting the blue light. For a moment, fear returned, the memory of the storm, the creatures, the chase. But then it saw the human still beside it, and the fear melted. It smiled, small but real. The child touched its chest, then pointed at the human. Its lips moved, whispering softly. The human did not understand the words, but they felt the meaning deep inside. The bond between them grew stronger, not just fragile anymore, but alive. The human touched their chest in return, then pointed at the child. Their voice echoed gently through the helmet. Soft, calm, warm. 2 different languages, 2 different worlds, but one message: we are together. The child's eyes shone with tears again, but these were not tears of fear. They were tears of relief. They rolled down its cheeks, warm this time, not freezing, not turning into crystals, just pure living tears. The human reached out a hand. The child placed its tiny fingers inside. The grip was weak but sure. The cave glowed brighter, as if the crystals themselves felt the connection. The hum deepened, steady, strong, a rhythm that matched 2 beating hearts. Outside, the creatures hissed. Their claws scratched at the snow. Their glowing eyes never blinked, but they did not enter. They stayed trapped in the storm. Unable to touch the warmth inside, the child pointed at the crystals, whispered again. The human tilted their head, watching as the child pressed its hand against the glowing stone. The crystal flared brighter. Light spread across the walls, revealing carvings, symbols, drawings, stories etched into the stone. The human's eyes widened. The child's ancestors had been here. This cave was not just shelter, it was history, memory, home. The carvings showed figures like the child standing together, holding hands, facing storms, facing darkness, but always with light. The child looked up at the human. Its lips curved into another smile, as if to say, "You are part of this now." The human placed a hand gently on the wall. The crystal hummed under the glove. For a moment, they felt connected not just to the child, but to this world, to its history, its pain, its hope. They were no longer just a visitor. They were part of something larger. The child leaned against the human's side again, its eyes heavy with sleep. But before drifting away, it whispered, one last word, soft, fragile, but filled with trust. The human did not know its meaning, but they knew it was important. A word that carried more than language. A word that carried love. The human looked down at the child, their heart heavy and light at the same time. Outside, the storm screamed. The creatures prowled. The world remained cruel and cold. But inside the cave there was warmth. There was hope. 2 lives had met in the ice, and nothing could erase that. The human tightened their hold on the weapon. Their eyes stayed on the entrance. The storm was not over. The danger had not ended. But they were not afraid, because now they were not alone. They had something worth fighting for, something worth protecting. And as the crystals glowed brighter, and the storm raged outside, one truth filled the cave. Simple, powerful, unbreakable. Sometimes, in the coldest storms, the warmest bonds are born, and sometimes, saving one child can save more than just a life. It can save hope itself.